All right, in this section, we're going to look at the add and the delete functionality that are very similar to what you're going to be doing in Lab 2. Again, we have this extra business with these categories here, but what we're looking at here in the layout is you retrieve the list and display the list. And the new functionality that we're going to add from the last video is that there's an additional column here in our table that has a delete button in it. And then we also look at the add product information. So we'll have to choose a category in this case. I'll give it a random number. We'll give it a name of something, and then we'll give it a list price. So we're going to come back to the add product in just a little bit. I'm going to work on the delete first. But let's go ahead and look at the code for the index. We're going to review that real quick. I'm going to go ahead and close some of these things down. Up at the top, we have our database file, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. Along with that would be our database error in case there was a connection error. So I'm going to go ahead and close that file down just to make things a little bit neater. So we connect to our database. In this case, we had to choose a category to filter out guitars from basses from drums. So that's where our category was selected. We passed it through the URL using the get functionality. And we did a little bit of error checking. So again, just to review from the last video, this is getting the name for a selected category. So if they selected guitars on the left, then we need the name guitars so we can show it on top of our table. Remember, that's right here. So if I select basses, I need to grab the word basses so I can then show it over here. This is going to get all the categories that allow me to show them on the side of the page. And then this is the SQL that we use to grab all of the products that meet or that have the category ID that we've selected. So this says select all from the product table where the category ID in the table is equal to our category ID that they've selected, and then we're going to order it by product ID. We'll prepare the query, we'll bind the values so that the category ID from the table matches up to the category ID in our variable. In the database, we'll execute that and get our record set to show all of the guitars that are selected. So again, I'm going to skip over a lot of the HTML here. This is showing the categories that I can choose from on the side. This code right here is our record set for each product that was returned. So in other words, if I return 6 guitars, there are 6 records in that record set. So this loop is going to go through 6 times and it's going to execute this code in HTML. So from the last one we looked at, this is pretty straightforward. It's going to show the product code, and it's going to show the product name, and it's going to show the product list price. What's new is a 4th set of TDs. And this is where we're going to add the delete button in. And so inside that last TD, what we're going to do is we're actually going to create a small, tiny little form in there that is going to allow us to submit our product ID to our delete product.php page. So in other words, what this is doing is this is displaying the button. That's actually this piece of code right here. The input type equals submit, value equals delete, is physically putting the gray button on the page. Then we're creating 2 hidden fields. This is all just HTML. And we're naming the first one product ID, and we're populating it with the product ID of whatever we're showing here in the table. So first guitar, we show its product code, we show its whatever guitar, we show that it's going to cost $127. And then hidden from the user, we're going to go ahead and echo out the product ID, and we're also going to echo out the category ID. So the user won't see this, but what we're doing is when they click that submit button, we're going to take those two values that are hidden on this form. They'll get packaged up. The action on the form will get called delete product.php, and we'll receive this information on that page that'll allow us to go in and find the product that we need to delete. So it'll loop through all of those things until it runs out of records. It'll put that last delete button on there. The form tag will close, very important. The TD tag will close. Then that row closes. So now we have product code, product name, product list price. We have a delete button, and we have two hidden fields on this form that when the submit button is clicked, the action will execute. It'll call delete product.php, and it'll send these values and be received by that piece of code. So let's go look at delete product.php. So what happens is your database connection, always there because we're going to play with the database. Those two hidden fields are going to be brought onto this form. They're going to be validated too. So if product ID is not false and the category ID is not false, then what you're going to do is you're going to set up your delete query. You're going to say delete from the products table where product ID in the database is equal to the product ID that was received from that form. And then it's not going to tell you, in the real world you should probably have a pop-up window that says, are you really sure you want to do this? But we're in the beginning stages of this. So what happens is your SQL runs, it deletes the product, and then it goes back to the index page. Okay, so what's important here, most important here, they bring the category ID over. I'm not exactly sure why they brought the category ID over to this one. But generally speaking, they need the product ID to make sure that they are going to delete the one that was clicked on. So it will, when they click on that button, it grabs the product ID of the product listed in that row, brings it in here, and uses it to find the product ID that has been selected, and then deletes it using the SQL query delete. And then just returns to the index page. So they would go back to the index page. This would all run again. And this time, there would only be 5 guitars in the list. So this loop down here, where we display the table, this for each loop would only run 5 times, showing the 5 remaining guitars. Okay. So the other option we're going to look at, we have a link to add product form.php. This is going to allow people to fill out the form and then to take that data and insert it into the database as required. So I'm going to look at add product form.php first. Let me bring that up so we can take a peek at it just to know what we're looking at. So add product. So it's going to give us this form. We're going to populate this drop down window or this drop down menu from the database. So we're going to have to grab those and put them in here. We're going to type in our code. We're going to type in our name. We're going to type in our list price. And then we're going to click the add product, which we'll see will then call our additional page of code that's going to actually add the product to the database. So let's take a look at it. We have our database. Again, still using the same statement. We could do that over and over again if we needed to, but we don't really need to. We write it in that one database.php file, and we require it when our code is going to query the database. So we're going to query the database. We're going to select everything from the categories table. We're going to order it by category ID. We're going to execute it, etc., etc. Same things we do every time we're selecting from the database.
Call from
Excuse me. Phone call. All right. So then what we're going to do is we are going to come down here. We're going to start our form. Notice the action on the form. Once the user clicks the submit button, it's going to call add product.php. We're looking at add product form.php. Don't get those two mixed up yet. So what we're going to do is, here is our loop. We'll work with this in a later lab where we populate a drop-down menu, but it doesn't hurt to look at it right now. So what it's going to do is, if it retrieved 3 categories, in this case it retrieved guitars, basses, and drums, it's going to create an option in the select list. Phone call on a different phone. Then it's going to, for each of the categories, in this case 3, it's going to echo out the category ID as the value of the option. And then it's going to echo out the category name as what the user sees. So if we were to take this PHP mess away, you would see value equals 1 and then would show. And then it'll end that loop. So basically what happens is it loops through. We get our 3 categories in the drop-down menu. And we have our regular form code where we allow people to put the stuff in. We have a submit button that calls the add product PHP. When they click that submit button, it takes all of the data that they've entered on the form and sends it to addProduct.php. So let's look at that, and we should be getting close to the end after that. So here's the code for our addProduct.php. We have to grab those we have to grab those datas, We have to grab the data. So we get the category that they selected. Now it's category ID. Instead of selecting the word guitar, what it did was it submitted the value of that option on that select list. So it sent the number from the database instead of the word guitar. So that's what's coming in here. That's the code that they filled in. That's the name of the item they filled in. And that's the price that they've submitted. And notice the validation that we looked at in the last video, the last lab being done there. So we're going to validate the inputs. If any of these are null, then we're going to create an error message that is going to give an invalid product data, check all fields, and try again. And it will include an error file. So let me break off and show you that code real quick. All it does is says error, and then it echoes out whatever error message was sent along. Okay. But if all of the data is valid, then we're going to create the connection to the database. So notice we did our error checking before we opened up the database. Just we want them to get all of the data ready before we actually open the database. And then after that, it's just a regular insert. So we're going to insert into products. These right here are the field names in the database. So we're going to insert into products a category ID, a product code, and a product name, and a list price. And we're going to use the values that we actually have stored, our category ID, our code, our name, and our price. So then what we'll do is we'll prepare the query. We'll bind those values so that we know the right one goes to the right variable, and we'll execute it. It will run the insert statement, and then you'll close the cursor. And again, there's no output on this page. What it'll do is it will automatically return it to the index.php page. It will run the code again, and now we have a 6th guitar back that we just added. So again, You'll loop through to show your information. If you delete, you're going to create a button that allows them to delete. If not, you're going to collect data from them on the add product form. Once you get that data off of that form, you'll send it to addproduct.php, where your data will be received and filtered. It'll be checked for null values. You'll open up the database. You'll write your insert statement telling it what fields in the table are going to match up with what fields here in your variables. And then you'll write the statements to actually execute the SQL. So this is pretty much the same thing. This part of the lab, except for that category thing, is pretty much what you're going to be doing for your lab 2. So get started on it. Let me know if you have any questions. Send your code to me if you need me to look at it. And that's it.